Hi folks, Tim here. Welcome back to Elmendorf Acres. We're working in the woods today and doing something a little different. We're actually up here dropping some of these trees that were damaged and killed by the spongy moth that used to be known as the gypsy moth. They changed it a few years ago to the spongy moth. So we're doing that today. But the other part of today is my buddy is working on redecking his trailer. He's rebuilding it, and he was talking with me about getting some lumber and what he should use, this and that and the other thing. And I said, well, you know, we've got this mill that we haven't really used too much yet, and I'd love some practice on it. So why don't we drop one of these rock oaks, which is technically known as a chestnut oak, and that's in the white oak family. And as you might know, white oak makes wonderful material for decking trailers. So we've got a tree to drop and some wood to mill, and stay tuned. Let's get to it. All right, so we're gonna go after this guy here. And as we pan up the tree, this first lead is completely dead, and the top of it is pretty much shot. This is one of the heavy damaged ones with those Gypsy Moth Caterpillars. So we're gonna drop this, and my goal is to put it right down the road here in the hole towards the truck. It's leaning a bit the other way, so we're gonna, actually, interestingly enough, we're not gonna rope this. I'm just gonna do my best and see what happens with it. It sounds kind of funny, but there is nothing else around here to hit. So it's a great time to just let it fly. All right, we're out here today with our 562, and that's what I'm dropping this tree with. All right, as you can see behind me, it actually went pretty good. Went exactly where I wanted it. Messed up the cut a little bit, but all in all, everything went down safe, so that's good. Now, let's take a look down this log here. As you can see, that is pretty straight. I've got a couple good logs in there that I'll be able to use for his trailer deck. We're going to grab a tape measure and measure this stuff up. Now, when I'm working in the woods, I try to avoid leaving a mess as much as possible, especially here on our property, because we do a lot of stuff here. We walk through the woods, kids play in the woods, and it's nice to have the access open rather than tripping over brush and whatnot. Obviously, this one straight down the wood road, so we got to get that cleaned up. But overall, we drop a tree, we clean it up, then we go to the next one. Definitely a lot different than an actual logger, but we don't pretend to be actual loggers, not at all. Occasionally I'll have a log that we sell to the mill or sell to the wood yard, but that's about it. So let's get this tape measure here and tractor fired up, and then we will bring these logs over to the mill and see what we come up with. take a peek here. So we're cutting 6/4 or 1.5 inch, and this is for a trailer deck. I cut everything at 12'6". He needs it right around 12 foot, so he's gonna cut those little edges off. That way he can square things up. But this is our first time really running this mill, other than a little bit of pine I cut the other day. I had some issues with it yesterday. Had to put a new engine on it. But this is what we've got right now. It's cutting pretty good. It seems to be cutting mostly true. I may have a few adjustments to make, but nothing too wild that I can tell, which is very nice. So we're gonna keep working with this and cut some more lumber. Blow this off for you quick so you can see it better. Alright, so this is a better view of this lumber that we're cutting here today. This is chestnut oak. It's in the white oak family. Locally we call it rock oak. That's always what I grew up calling it. And my guess would be the old timers called it that because it always grew in areas that were really rocky. So around here on the ridges, stuff like that, we've got a lot of that. This cluster that we have here, there's a lot of boulders in here and a lot of rock ledge. So this stuff grows well there. They don't usually grow real tall, but every now and then you'll get a nice tall one. This log was actually realistically too big for this mill, but it's our first time kind of dialing everything in with anything other than just tinkering for ourselves. So this is going to my buddy. He's redecking a trailer. He needs 6/4 or 1.5 inch lumber for that, and we're cutting this at just a touch over. That way when it dries down, it'll fit right in the grooves that he needs it to fit in. So that's the goal here, is get this dialed in, play with it a little bit, make a couple bucks with it, enough to pay for the blades that we're using. And we had an issue with the mill yesterday. I actually had to put a new engine on it because we had a fuel delivery issue, put a new carb on it, did all kinds of other things. Ended up having a bad gas tank. The tank was pretty old. And with what parts cost and so on and so forth, sometimes it's easier and cheaper to just go to Harbor Freight, grab a new Predator engine, and slap that on. So I did that last night in the dark. I actually went into Kingston, bought a new engine, did the swap over in the garage, came up here at I think 7:30 last night in the dark under truck headlights, swapped this new engine in, put the new blades on, got everything back up and running, and now here we are this morning milling lumber. And if you've never done anything with green oak, it is heavy. Unfortunately, our scale on the mill is actually missing the part that comes out and shows us exactly where we are. But realistically, that's probably not dialed in and accurate anyway, at least not yet. So what I've been doing is I've just been running my square down, marking 1.5 inches, lining the blade up to it and running it that way. Once we get everything dialed in and I'm a little more practiced with it all, along with us getting that part fixed, it's just a simple plexiglass part, little sight glass basically. I need to make that, swap it in, it'll work good. But until then, right now, the square is working pretty good for us. But that gives a great point of reference. It's good for us to learn this mill. And before I forget, I've got to move this log holder down, this dog down, otherwise I'll be replacing a blade. So let's move this down a touch. There we go. Down a touch more maybe. Right to there. All right, that's got that locked in. As you can see, we put a Predator engine on this. Those Harbor Freight Predator engines actually work pretty good, especially for stuff like this. They fire right off. All right, there we are. We're loaded up. Everything's been cut, and I'm getting ready to deliver this to my buddy's shop. He's got his trailer just about ready for a new deck, so that's where this is going. There was enough between these 9 on the bottom to be able to redeck the trailer, but what I had is this one was towards the bottom of the one board. It's actually just a touch under 1.5 inches, but I'm throwing it in there for him anyway because it was out of that log. And the deal with this guy, you can see behind me, this one side has still a little bit of live edge on it. But if he gets in trouble with one of the other boards, needs to, he can always trim a couple inches off of this and fit that in nice. So I figured I'd send that with him. But here we go. Ready for its trip. Just need to tie it down and off I go. And you can see we made some stickers here as well. It's always wise to make these stickers out of the same type of wood that you're milling. So these were just a couple pieces that were left over. Didn't really like how they turned out, and cut them into stickers quick. That way he can stack these nice and have some air go between the layers if he's not ready to put these on the trailer deck right away. Let him sit for a couple weeks on these stickers in his shop. So I'm definitely still learning this milling process, and I think it's going to take a little while to get used to it. I have no training in it whatsoever. It's just kind of doing what makes sense. But to me, the nicest thing with milling oak is any of these bigger chunks that are behind me here that you can see with all the bark on them. I wasn't too careful about getting every single little bit of lumber out of this log that I could, just because any of this stuff, it's going to get cut up into firewood, and that's going to make some awesome firewood. Realistically, as long as we put that aside now and stack it covered, it can be seasoned by next season, just because it's already cut. The bark is already off at least 1, 2, or 3 sides of it, and we're going to have it split, covered, and stacked. So that will be ready to burn next season if we decide to do that with it. And I already texted one of my buddy with a couple pictures, and he said, ooh, I want some of that live edge stuff, because he does a little bit of work with signs. So there's this one down here. I'll bring you down so you can see it. You can see kind of this wide one here. That was from last night when I was having a lot of issues getting everything dialed in. But you can see that's actually a really nice live edge. He can use it for a sign or 2 signs or whatever. This is the wider part. If we flip it over, all right, flip that same board over, and you can see there's a lot less wood showing here, but we've got all this bark, and if he strips that off, it'll be a cool live edge. So that's going to my buddy Kurt, and I think he's going to make a couple signs with it. But you can see stuff like this. That's dirt from the tractor tires. Could I have cut another board out of here a little bit differently? Yes, I could have, but it's all getting cut up and used for firewood anyway, so I'm not too particular about that. All right, let's take a drive and get this stuff delivered.